Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I'm going to be talking about Tales of the Jedi, the brand new series that just released. It is a 6-episode anthology series. Each episode runs roughly from, 8 to 15 minutes long. It kind of differentiates. And the series is broken up into 2 characters, each of which gets the focus of 3 episodes. So we have Ahsoka and Count Dooku, which is an interesting pick for 2 different characters. But I'm going to be talking about, each arc as those 2 things. So we're just going to cover all 6 episodes because they're short enough. First, let's go over the Ahsoka stuff. So the very first episode for Ahsoka, which actually is like episode 1, they kind of mix and match them there. Episode 1, it's all about Ahsoka being born, and it's just a really short story about her mom goes on this hunt, and then she gets taken by this tiger creature, and then she kind of does that forced beast connection with, she uses the Force as a little baby, which, by the way, that has happened plenty of times throughout the Clone Wars, throughout Star Wars. So anyone who's surprised that a small child can use the Force, I don't know, watch more stuff, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, so yes, she makes like a connection with this tiger, and the tiger ends up just bringing her back to her village, and everyone in her village, this older lady basically is like, she's a Jedi, okay. And I guess you can assume from there that's when they would maybe contact the Jedi and Plo Koon would show up, because I think the idea is that Plo Koon is the one who finds her, right? So I guess we can just make that assumption that's what ends up happening. Anyways, episode 2 for Ahsoka is actually a pretty interesting one. This one is all about just practicing this training montage, and she's really just doing this like Jedi technique where she gets surrounded by these training little droids, right? Those little training droids. And she's able to pass that test really easily. So Anakin wants to make a more difficult one, so he gathers the 501st, and basically they do exactly what ends up happening during Order 66, where she's surrounded by all the clone troopers, and she ends up having to deflect everything that happens there. Pause. Hey, give me like 15 minutes. Okay. Just a little bit. So this entire episode can kind of be seen as like, okay, this is how she learned to do, not even just like that specific move, but it's essentially how she learned to survive as well as she did, because she got like this next level crazy intense training that no other Jedi was doing, that Anakin like put together especially for her. And of course, luckily enough, she was training about dodging the clone troopers firing, the exact same people that would one day fire on her. And they even show like a flash forward event from season 7 when she like walks into the hangar where all the clones were waiting. So they even like point out that like, yes, this is about that exact moment in time. And then the third and final Ahsoka episode is, this one is somewhat controversial online, and I kind of tweeted my opinions about this, but yeah, so if you've read the, I think it was 2014, 2015, I don't know. There was an Ahsoka young adult novel that was released, and it essentially covered the events right after Revenge of the Sith, what happened to Ahsoka, and they even talked about like her time during the Mandalorian siege on Mandalore kind of thing, before season 7 of Clone Wars even came out. So it is a beloved novel to a lot of people out there, and this is not the first time. When Siege of Mandalore came out for Clone Wars, there was some contradictions as to what was described in the novel, and we kind of see that happen once again. There's some characters that are not really given names in this short, but in the books there are specifically supposed to be these other characters there, and it's gotten some people upset. Some people like really, really upset that this little 10-minute short did not do what the novel did, And look, I guess my thing is like, at this point in time, it seems pretty evident, given how Kanan was changed and Cobb Vanth was changed, and a lot of stuff that was like written in comics and books has been slightly altered for live action and animation, right? I think it's pretty evident that what's happening here is that yes, published materials, books, comic books, they're still canon, like they still happened, but when they are adapted to, you know, live action or animation, when they're adapted later, there might be some changes because the person adapting those stories might say, you know what, I kind of want to do this. I want to set it during daytime. I want to have the Bad Batch be there, you know, stuff like that, right? So the end result is still the same. Like, Ahsoka was on this planet, fought an Inquisitor, she defeated him, took his crystals, purified them to make them white. Like, it's the exact story that happened still. It's just like there are changes now, you know, and some people are going to get really, really upset because they want everything to be concrete canon. You know, they feel like this was a promise that they are owed this epic promise and it has to be this way. But I guess my thing is that this is like the 5th or 6th or 7th time that they've altered things, right? And so by now, by the year 2022, why are you still holding on to this, like, this promise you felt Lucasfilm should be keeping? Like, what? It's clear that they're going to change things. They've done it several times before already, so I don't know. It's kind of weird at this point that you're surprised, you know, like, you should have expected this and have accepted it, I guess. I don't know. Kind of strange. People are weird, I think. Look, you can like the novel, you can like this short. It's a 10-minute segment. If you want to read the novel instead of watch this episode, okay, do that. Whatever, man. I don't know. Stop being weird, people. Anyways, so that's the end of Ahsoka's side of this thing. You know, she defeats the Inquisitor, and that's it, right? Now, I do feel like of the 2, like, 3-episode arcs, Ahsoka, while it had some moments that I'm really glad we saw, like she was there for Padme's funeral and, you know, stuff like that. Like, I'm really glad that happened. There are, like, it was not as I guess profound as this next thing we're gonna get. So Count Dooku's 3-episode arcs. So the first one happens with Count Dooku and Qui-Gon. They're there, they go to a planet to try to, you know, some senator's child was kidnapped by the locals, and they go there and they find the child, and turns out that the locals are being treated like crap by this senator of the planet, and you know, they try to sort of intervene, and Count Dooku almost goes too far, where he's like choking the senator. He's saying like, your corruption needs to end, you know. And that's really what we see throughout these first 2 episodes, where Count Dooku, over the years, and it's kind of unclear what year the 2nd episode takes place, but over the years, basically, he is seeing the corruption of the Republic. And the thing is that it's real. It's not like a lie that Palpatine tells him later. It's like, no, he sees this stuff. It is real. It did happen. The Republic did suck in a lot of places, you know. Like, it's not like this purely good thing. Like, it was, you know, it just like actual politics, you know. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of shitty people out there doing shitty things. So he's not wrong, you know, in that sense. You know, the 2nd episode is with Dooku and Mace Windu, and this Jedi was killed, and so they go to the planet to investigate, because it seems kind of fishy that the Jedi was just ambushed, and that's it. That's the only story they get. So they go there just to get the, you know, they're supposed to only be getting the Jedi's body, but Dooku wants to investigate, right? Because it's like, okay, clearly something else happened here. He wants to get to the bottom of this. Whereas the entire time, Mace Windu's like, no, we're following protocol. We're not here to do any of this other stuff. Let's just get the body and leave, right? Now, it does turn out that the guards, not the senator himself, but like the guards are the ones who killed the Jedi, and it was something about the senator was selling off the planet piece by piece and to get rich, and so the guards were trying to, you know, it's basically another story where it's like, hey, the common people, the normal people, are being treated horribly by the politicians, you know. So again, Dooku's like, yeah, these politicians suck, this republic sucks, you know. Like, I kind of hate this republic, you know. Why are the Jedi serving this republic so much, you know? And so even when they get back from their mission, you know, Mace Windu kind of does his by the books, by the rules kind of thing, where he's like, he's gonna report everything that Dooku did, because he kind of went too far, and that senator ended up getting killed, and if they hadn't done that, then the senator would still be alive, you know. So but, you know, Mace Windu was like, hey, I'm still gonna vouch for you, and by the way, turns out I'm getting the council seat from the Jedi who died. And Dooku has this moment where he's like, did you know you were gonna get that council seat when we went in there? Like, is that why you were so by the books all the time and you didn't want to instigate anything? It's because you knew you were about to get this high up position and you didn't want to risk that? And he's like, no, I didn't know that. And Dooku's like, yeah, sure. Now, I think Mace Windu was telling the truth, but it is interesting that, you know, was there a hint of jealousy there? Probably, you know, but there's also, like, Dooku does not trust the Jedi. He doesn't trust the Jedi, he doesn't trust the Republic, and these cracks are forming over years, and I find that fascinating, you know? And then we have the third episode. Now, this episode is where it ties into everything, and this was amazing. This is honestly, like, I don't know, it feels like we haven't gotten something like this in Star Wars in a long time, and it's because this is so interwoven between very specific events that we have known for years, that it kind of recontextualizes that time. And what I mean is, we see Qui-Gon Jinn. This is during the Phantom Menace, and it is right after they escape from Tatooine. They go back to Coruscant, and this is right before they end up going to Naboo, and of course Qui-Gon Jinn dies on Naboo, right? So while they're on Coruscant, and they have that whole thing where Anakin tries to guess the cup, and they're like, oh, we're gonna decide the boy's future, you know, all that stuff. Everyone's going crazy around the Jedi Temple, because it's like, Qui-Gon Jinn says he encountered a Sith Lord, right? And it's like, what's a Sith Lord? And it's amazing seeing these moments, because Count Dooku's like, what planet did this happen on? And he hears Tatooine. Oh, and right before this, Count Dooku went into the archives and deleted Kamino. So this lets you know that way back in Phantom Menace, that's when, specifically on that day, that's when Kamino was deleted from their systems. So 10 years before Attack of the Clones, Kamino has been lost to them that long. And they never even realized, you know, because he used Sifo Dyas's code, his personal code. Now, this also has to have me imagine that this is like right after Sifo Dyas died, because we know Count Dooku sets this whole thing up with the Pikes, where Sifo Dyas goes on a mission with the Pikes, and his ship gets shot down, and he gets killed there. And so now we have to imagine that this is right after that is when, you know, Count Dooku goes back to Coruscant, uses Sifo Dyas's code to delete Kamino from the archives. It's amazing. Just all of this is amazing. It's all playing together. And then, of course, you know, Dooku talks to Qui-Gon about, like, oh, you ran into a Sith Lord. Now, I was kind of expecting here for Qui-Gon to say something about Anakin, like, because remember, this is literally they just left Tatooine, so I kind of expected him to say, by the way, I ran into this boy, and I think he might be the chosen one. But he didn't mention anything about that, which I guess it's fine. Like, you know, we only have so much time in the short, so maybe they felt that this just made more sense for them to, you know, get together, and he talks about Obi-Wan instead, right? And they even mention that, like, yeah, Obi-Wan has not met Count Dooku, right? Because you have to remember, like, once a master and a Padawan get together, they're off on missions for like months at a time, you know, and Dooku's probably been doing his own stuff, you know, in secret. So it makes sense that they've never actually crossed paths at this point, and they don't meet for a long time, you know. So it's kind of fascinating to think about. But yeah, basically they then cut to after the title card, they cut to where Qui-Gon has died. So this is what, the next day, right? Because they go back to Naboo and they have the big fight, and Qui-Gon's dead, and they're having the funeral, and Dooku's like, I'm not going to the funeral. I have to let Qui-Gon go, you know. And he's like crazy hurt, and Yaddle's there, and Yaddle's like, you're really not gonna come? And she tries to comfort him, and he kind of mentions how, like, oh yeah, this tree, which was a significant tree that we kind of learn about several times later on in different stories, this tree on the top of the Jedi Temple. But basically what ends up happening is that Count Dooku leaves to his secret spot where he meets up with Darth Sidious, and we've seen this at the end of Attack of the Clones. This is the same exact building where they meet before. Yaddle follows him there. And while he's there, he mentions about how, like, look, Sifo Dyas, the Kamino, the clones, I did all this stuff for you. and you allowed Qui-Gon Jinn to die. And Sidious, of course, is just like, hey, look, you lost an apprentice, I lost an apprentice. Darth Maul is dead, right? So it's interesting at this point is that, like, Darth Maul was his apprentice, but also Dooku's just been, like, working with him. So it's like Dooku, I guess, was not Darth Tyrannus at this point. He was just a guy who was working with him. I don't know, maybe the idea was always that Dooku was going to replace Maul, but who knows exactly what was going to end up happening. But this is what happened. He was working with Darth Sidious, but he was not considered his apprentice yet. Kind of interesting. I still want to, if you read Dooku Jedi Lost, you see the moment when Dooku first meets Palpatine, but we still have never seen the big reveal. We've never seen the moment where Palpatine reveals who he is to Count Dooku and tries to start talking to him about the dark side. We never see any of that. We still haven't seen it. So it feels like we've seen right before that and right after that. So one day we're going to get that story where Palpatine approaches Count Dooku and be like, okay, I'm a Sith Lord. You want to, I got an apprentice right now, but if you want to work with me, you can probably replace that guy, whenever he's not useful anymore. Like it feels like that's a conversation that we just haven't seen yet. So anyways, Yaddle overhears everything, and so she confronts him, which, by the way, if Yaddle had just gone back to the temple, I understand none of the masters are there right now. They're all at Qui-Gon's funeral, right? But still, it feels like if she had just left and just got on the phone and just been like, hey, I overheard the craziest thing. We need to start an investigation at the very least, then it feels like Star Wars would have been changed forever. And they've done this before. The season 7 of Clone Wars, they had a lot of moments where it's like, if this one character had made this one decision slightly differently, then the next 40-50 years of storytelling changes, and like, so we have another moment here where it's like, if Yaddle had did something different than go in this room alone and try to confront Darth Sidious, then maybe she would have lived and something else would have come of this. But no, she goes in there and she tries to talk Dooku and to be like, hey, look, whatever you've done, help me now. Help me take out this Sith Lord, right? And we can forgive everything else that you've done. It doesn't matter, I don't care. Help me right now. This is the point for you to make that decision. And of course, we all know what's going to end up happening. Count Dooku attacks Yaddle, and it looks for a minute like she gets crushed by a door, but then she comes back, and then only for her to get struck down. And that's the end of Yaddle. That now we know, like, Yaddle is dead. We know exactly how it happened and where it happened and when it happened. And now it's kind of interesting that, like, you watch Phantom Menace and you're like, so during Qui-Gon's funeral, while that's happening, while they're all there just like in that scene, well, no, I guess not during that scene. It can't be, huh? It has to be right before it. You know why? You know what I just realized? Hold on. I just realized something. Palpatine is at Qui-Gon's funeral. Okay, so everyone was leaving to go to Qui-Gon's funeral, so I guess this is right before that then, huh? This can't be during the funeral, because Palpatine's there, so obviously he's still on Coruscant in that room, so this must be right before the funeral happens, because everyone was leaving. Okay, so never mind. So right before the funeral then, that's when all this takes place and Yaddle dies. So I do wonder, like, how do they cover up this murder? Like, what do they say happens to Yaddle, right? Because obviously the Jedi are gonna realize that she's missing, so you have to come up with, like, some kind of story of, like, oh, her body was found here and she was killed by this instead, like, yeah. So what is the story they come up with to cover this up? And then, of course, Dooku is gonna probably shortly after this announce that he's leaving the Jedi, right? Because he's just become the apprentice officially of Palpatine. But anyways, just fascinating stuff. It feels like with the Dooku story, we got so much, like, it's not just like Yaddle and Qui-Gon, but it's like the fact that it's so intertwined into the Phantom Menace, specifically to, like, where it's right before this happens and right after that happens, and you're seeing reactions to events that we've known for 20 years, but now we're seeing like these points of views, and like, you know, it's like when we saw Order 66 happen in different ways. You know, like we saw it during Jedi Fallen Order, and we saw it season 7 of the Clone Wars. You know, like seeing Count Dooku react to Qui-Gon's death, or the news that a Sith Lord was confronted and everyone's going crazy in the Jedi Temple, like, oh my god, a Sith Lord, really? You know, like, it's just stuff that you never thought that you would see, and like, it was amazing. Just, and I guess that's my thing, is that like, not every, you know, I've seen people be like, why can't all Star Wars be like this? Well, honestly, the only reason that this worked so well is because it was, you know, surrounded and being buffered up by all the other stuff that we know. You know, like if I hadn't read Dooku Jedi Lost, and you know, like if I had never seen Phantom Menace or whatever, then this episode wouldn't be nearly as powerful, right? So like, the only reason this works is because it's so intertwined and interconnected with everything else, you know. But that's a very specific type of story, right? Anyways, man, that was amazing. I am so glad that we got to see this. I hope they keep making these. I really, really hope that like 6 months from now or a year from now, they come out with, you know, pick 2 other characters and make little shorts about them. Have a Luke Skywalker one, right? Like that would be a perfect time to go ahead and do the Luke Skywalker and Ben Solo era, right? Like have 3 episodes at different times where he's training them or something, right? Well, I guess you kind of covered Obi-Wan. There's not much of Obi-Wan you could do, but you could definitely do Yoda. There's so much time for Yoda. So much time. You could do a High Republic episode, and then you could do a right before the prequels episode, and then you could do like where he's in Dagobah. You know, like there's so much Yoda time you could do. There's a lot of characters you could like do these like 3 episode little things with, and just, it's like I said on Twitter, it's like filling in the blanks is usually kept for novels and comics and video games, right? Like seeing these little moments or answering these tiny questions of like, wait, what happened right after this? You know, like that's always like, oh, it's in a comic book, you know? So now it's really great to just be able to actually see it here and just watch it play out, of like questions that I've had for a while, right? Like we've known that Dooku erased Kamino from the archives, but when did that happen? How did that happen? How did he get away with it? And no one ever noticed. And now we know. Now we have that answer. And that's like, you know, it seems like such a simple thing, but it's like the movies, the prequels especially, were so much about just telling you things that happened, but they left so many questions unanswered, you know? And it just, I don't know. It's really cool to see it all just actually be answered. And oh man, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about Tales of the Jedi. Were you upset about the book Ahsoka not matching up with this episode? And look, like I said, guys, no, canon, not canon, retcon, these are all just stories. If you like the book, then you can just read the book. It's fine, guys. And this is just like when people got upset about the Rings of Power. It's like, okay, it's not following the book. I don't know. It's whatever. Anyways, that's a long tangent. Not going down that road again. Look, let me know what you guys thought about the Tales of the Jedi, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.